can you charge me with murder if you didn't see me shoot my own cousin?
There was blood inside that car. Guess whose blood that is? Miguel Bush. That's you, right? And by the look in your face, you even know what I'm talking about. Don't you?
If I did tell you the truth right now, I'm still going to jail.
Yes.
See?
But I can't stop that.
Why?
Because you're not giving me anything.
Meet 18-year-old Miguel Bush, a young man who thought he could escape the consequences of a brutal crime. Confident that his actions would go unnoticed, he never imagined that one crucial mistake would unravel everything. A mistake that would ultimately expose his role in a senseless murder. It was just another morning in Central Florida, but for 18-year-old Miguel Bush, this day would change his life forever. At first glance, he seemed like a typical teenager hanging out with friends, living life. But beneath that facade, a deadly secret was unfolding, one that would soon be exposed. On June 28, 2019, Miguel and his friends decided to steal a car. They didn't pick a flashy sports car or a luxury vehicle. No, they went for a Toyota Camry, an unremarkable choice for anyone with any sense of criminal planning. But they didn't care. The plan seemed simple. Steal the car, drive around, maybe make a quick getaway. Little did they know, they had just set the stage for a tragedy that would change everything. By 8 a.m., the stolen Toyota was seen near the home of George Dallas Jr. in Orlando. Two men wearing ski masks got out of the car. Without hesitation, one of them shot George, leaving him lifeless on the ground. The two men jumped back into the car and fled the scene, thinking they'd pulled off the perfect crime. But they had made one crucial mistake, a mistake that would soon come back to haunt them. Miguel, the young man behind the wheel, thought he had gotten away with it. What he didn't know was that his actions had already been traced. The car was found abandoned just a short distance away, and inside there was clear evidence that Miguel was involved. It wasn't just his fingerprints that were found, there was also something far more incriminating: his blood. As the investigation began, detectives quickly pieced together the story, but there was more. Someone had dropped their phone at the scene of the crime, and that phone was linked to Miguel. It was a rookie mistake, but it was enough to tie him to the murder. By the time the detectives showed up at his home, Miguel had no idea what was coming. He was woken up early in the morning, barely out of bed when the arrest warrant was served. His reaction? Surprised, but not yet afraid. He thought he could talk his way out of it, as so many young criminals do. He had no idea that the detectives already had the evidence they needed to charge him. But it wasn't just the physical evidence that would seal Miguel's fate, it was the lies. Every time he spoke, he dug himself deeper into a hole. He denied everything at first, insisting that he had nothing to do with George's murder.
I don't know nothing about the car. The car was right there.
What kind of car?
A Toyota.
Okay, so you didn't know anything about that?
I don't know about that. I walked past the car. They say, oh, they got your own pistol.
But the more he denied, the more the truth became undeniable. And as the detectives confronted him with the facts, the blood, the fingerprints, the stolen car, Miguel began to realize that his attempt to play it cool was not going to work.
Because this is a report from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. You know what blood is, right?
Yeah.
All right. There was blood inside that car. Guess whose blood that is? Miguel Bush. That's you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You never been inside that car? Your blood is all over the inside. And by the look in your face, you even know what the I'm talking about.
At first, he remained defiant, claiming he wasn't involved in the shooting. But the evidence didn't lie. The blood in the car wasn't from any of the other suspects. It was Miguel's. The turning point came when the detective showed Miguel a key piece of evidence, a report that included a damning piece of information. There was blood inside the car, not just any blood, Miguel's blood. The look on his face said it all. He knew what the detective was talking about. There was no more room for lies. Miguel, realizing he had nowhere to run, was forced to face the truth. The questioning grew intense, and as the detective laid out all the evidence before him, Miguel's defiance crumbled. It was time for him to stop hiding behind lies and come clean. But even then, Miguel tried to make excuses. He denied being involved in the murder, even though the evidence was right in front of him. But as the detective pushed further, Miguel began to break. He started to admit what had happened, piece by piece. It wasn't a full confession, but it was a start. The detective wasn't trying to trick him into a confession. He was trying to give Miguel a chance to come clean, to tell the truth before it was too late. As the interrogation continued, Miguel's story began to shift. He admitted to being in the car when George was shot, but he still insisted he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. He claimed to have been with someone else, a man named Lucky, who Miguel said had been the one to shoot George. But the detective wasn't convinced. The evidence didn't match Miguel's story. There was more to the story, and the detective was determined to get to the bottom of it. Miguel's world was collapsing around him. He had thought he could get away with murder, but now, the walls were closing in. His lies weren't holding up. The more he tried to deny his involvement, the more his own actions betrayed him. He thought he could escape justice, but in the end, it was the truth that would catch up with him. As the interrogation continued, Miguel Bush found himself trapped in a web of his own making. Every attempt to avoid responsibility for the crime was met with evidence that contradicted his story. He thought he could talk his way out of this, but with every passing moment, the truth became harder to deny. Miguel's mind raced as the detectives continued to present the mounting evidence. His fingerprints were found all over the stolen car, and his blood, a piece of evidence he couldn't explain away, was found inside. The car, the scene, the witnesses, everything pointed to his involvement, but still Miguel clung to his story that he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. He told the detectives that he hadn't shot George Dallas, that he was merely a bystander, but the more he denied, the more the case against him solidified. What Miguel didn't realize was that in trying to distance himself from the murder, he was only digging himself into a deeper hole. The detectives knew he was lying, and their persistence was slowly wearing him down. Every new piece of evidence they revealed, from the stolen car to the phone found at the scene, pointed directly to him. And with every contradiction in his story, the walls began to close in. But the turning point came when the detectives pressed him on the key piece of evidence: his blood. There was no way around it. His blood was found inside the car. The detective's calm yet firm questioning made it clear Miguel had been there. He had been involved. His attempt to distance himself from the crime wasn't working. As the hours wore on, Miguel's defenses crumbled. He tried to deny his involvement, but the evidence was undeniable. The detective was methodical, showing Miguel every piece of the puzzle. The more Miguel resisted, the more the detective revealed. It wasn't just the physical evidence, it was the fact that Miguel was running out of excuses. He had been there when George was killed. He had witnessed the entire thing, and no amount of lying was going to change that. Miguel's attempts to explain himself became increasingly incoherent. He insisted that he wasn't the shooter, but his reluctance to take full responsibility for what happened made it clear that he was still trying to avoid facing the consequences of his actions. The more he spoke, the more his words contradicted each other, and the more the detectives knew he was hiding something. But there was a glimmer of hope for Miguel. The detectives weren't looking to pin everything on him. They wanted to get to the truth, not just for their case, but for Miguel's future as well. They knew that if he would just admit what happened, he might stand a chance of reducing his sentence. The truth could help him, but only if he was willing to face it. As Miguel sat there, his mind racing, he knew that his situation was getting worse with every lie. The detective had given him the opportunity to come clean, but Miguel wasn't ready to fully admit what had happened. He hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. But the reality of his situation was becoming impossible to ignore. The evidence was irrefutable, and the more he tried to evade responsibility, the more it became clear that he was only making things worse for himself. Miguel was no longer in control of the situation. The detectives had presented their case, and all that was left was for him to face the consequences. But Miguel wasn't ready to give in. He continued to deny his involvement, even though the truth was staring him in the face. It wasn't until the detective confronted him with one last piece of evidence that everything began to unravel. The blood in the car, the fingerprints, the stolen vehicle, it all pointed to Miguel. The detective's words were blunt. "We have everything we need, Miguel. You can keep lying, but it won't change what happened." For the first time, Miguel felt the weight of the truth pressing down on him. He couldn't escape it anymore. He had been there. He had been a part of it. And now he had to face the reality of his actions. Miguel's refusal to admit the full extent of his involvement in George Dallas's murder was not only delaying the inevitable, but also making his situation far worse. The evidence that had been presented to him, his fingerprints, his blood, the stolen car, was all pointing in one direction. Yet there he sat, still clinging to the hope that somehow he could escape the weight of his actions. But the longer Miguel held out, the closer he was to the consequences that would change his life forever. It wasn't just the detectives who had been relentless in their pursuit of the truth. Miguel's own guilt was starting to creep in, slowly but surely. The way he had tried to dismiss his role in the murder had made him appear more like a coward than an innocent bystander. The truth was starting to catch up with him, and it wasn't going to let go. The turning point came when the detective, still calm but unwavering, gave Miguel one final opportunity to take control of his fate. He wasn't offering a free pass, but he was offering a chance at a lighter sentence. If Miguel would just face the truth and stop lying. The detective made it clear if Miguel continued to lie, he was looking at a life sentence. But if he could admit his part in the crime, there might be some hope for leniency. Miguel had been in denial for hours, stubbornly holding on to the belief that if he just kept denying his involvement, the situation might magically resolve itself. But the longer he held on to that lie, the more he trapped himself in a world of uncertainty. Deep down, Miguel knew he had been part of something that went terribly wrong. He wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, but he had been complicit. He had been there, and he had allowed it to happen. The decision was now Miguel's. He could keep lying, keep denying, and risk being charged with first-degree murder. Or he could face the reality of the situation and admit what he had done. The problem was, admitting it meant accepting the fact that his life, as he knew it, was over. He would never be the same again. And with that truth looming over him, he hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, something inside Miguel clicked. He could no longer ignore the facts that were staring him in the face. His blood was in the car, his fingerprints were all over it. He had been a part of George Dallas's murder, and no amount of lying could change that. He had been there when it happened. He had witnessed the killing. He could try to distance himself from it all, but the truth was inescapable. Miguel had been caught between fear and reality for hours. Now the time had come to face what he had done. There would be no easy way out. The only path forward was to admit his role and take responsibility for his actions. And that's exactly what he did. For the first time during the entire interrogation, Miguel stopped trying to shift the blame. He stopped denying the truth and admitted, albeit reluctantly, that he had been there. He hadn't pulled the trigger, but he had been complicit. He had allowed his friend Lucky to carry out the murder, and he had done nothing to stop it. The truth spilled out slowly at first, but eventually it was all laid bare. Miguel had been involved from the moment he stole the car to the point where George Dallas was killed. The detective, who had been so patient throughout the ordeal, nodded in acknowledgement of Miguel's admission. He wasn't surprised. He had known from the start that Miguel had been there. The question had always been whether or not Miguel would be honest enough to admit it. And now that he had, the detective's next words were not just about Miguel's future, but about what came next. The detective told Miguel that his cooperation had earned him something invaluable, a chance at a better future. Miguel had been honest. He had admitted to his involvement in the crime. In a case like this, the court would take into account his willingness to come clean and cooperate. That could mean a reduced sentence. But even as the detective spoke, Miguel knew the road ahead would be far from easy. He had taken a life, and whether he pulled the trigger or not, that was something he could never undo. The guilt of what he had allowed to happen would follow him for the rest of his life. Miguel was charged with second-degree murder and robbery with a firearm, but his decision to cooperate, to be honest with the detectives, had worked in his favor. His sentence was reduced. He would serve 14 years in prison, a sentence that was harsh, but still a chance for redemption. He was set to be released in 2032, still young enough to rebuild his life, but forever marked by the decisions he made that led to George's death. Lucky, the man who had pulled the trigger, wasn't as fortunate. His involvement in the murder and his own history of violence led to a more severe sentence. He was sentenced to 17 years in prison, but even as he sat in his cell, Lucky's fate was sealed. He had made the choice to kill George Dallas, and that choice would haunt him for the rest of his life. For Miguel, the journey wasn't over. His story wasn't just about a crime. It was about a young man's struggle with his own conscience, his own guilt, and the harsh reality of the consequences of his actions. The pain he caused was not just limited to George's family, it rippled through his own life, affecting everyone, his mother, his family, his friends. They would all feel the impact of the choices he made. In the end, Miguel Bush's story is a reminder of how easily a life can spiral out of control. One bad decision, one moment of weakness, and everything can change. But for Miguel, at least he had the opportunity to face it before it was too late for him to make a difference. As Miguel's story comes to a close, we're left with an undeniable truth. The choices we make, no matter how small they may seem at the time, can change the course of our lives forever. For Miguel, it wasn't just about being at the wrong place at the wrong time. It was about the lies he told, the mistakes he made, and the people he hurt along the way. But the real question is, what do you think? Was Miguel a cold-blooded killer? Or was he just an accomplice to a crime that spiraled out of control? Could he have stopped it? Or was he too afraid to face the consequences of doing the right thing? If you want to hear more stories like Miguel's, stories that dive into the psychology behind crime, betrayal, and justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And if you've been affected by this case or have thoughts about what happened, We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. We value your thoughts and insights, and they help us continue telling these stories in the way they deserve to be told. Remember, justice isn't always black and white. Sometimes the truth is hidden beneath layers of lies, fear, and regret. It's up to us to uncover it.